I just went in and the consultant was sitting there and I said, what can be done? Like, can we have surgery? And they just said no. And I said, well, what are we looking at? And they were like, stage 4, like, and there isn't a whole lot we can do here. And I just was like, I just said, how much time do I have? And they said, possibly years, but short years. And that just rings in my head, like,
Short years.
constantly, you know, those words.
Today I'm joined by Leona Macken, a 39-year-old wife and mum of 2 whose life changed forever after abnormalities in her smear test were wrongly reported as negative. A year ago, the HSE apologised after medical experts concluded those abnormalities should have been detected years earlier, a delay which ultimately led to Leona developing stage 4 metastatic cervical cancer. 1 year on from that apology, I wanted to catch up with Leona to hear how she and her family are doing and why she continues to use her voice to campaign for change and encourage women to trust their instincts. Leona, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I just want to go back to just before you noticed things were not quite right.
Mm-hmm.
What was life like for you? You had your 2 gorgeous daughters,
Yeah.
Quinn and Drew,
Mm.
and how are you feeling? What were you're working in hairdressing?
I was very content, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, my kids were really young, so I was just kind of enjoying motherhood, you know, doing first things and, you know, bringing them to the farm, doing things at the weekends.
Yeah.
I worked part-time, so I worked like Tuesday, Friday, Saturday. Alan worked at Plus at the time, so he'd be finished work real early and stuff. So we'd be able to go off and do things, like, you know, and I just had I say like a very simple life, a very small life, but I was content. I was very content, you know.
You're happy.
I was really happy. Yeah, I really was. And I can't stress that enough, because I think anyone that knows me would know how grateful I've always been, you know, just for little things, just the little things in life is what made me happy. And still to this day it is. But I think I just felt like a normal person. You know, I felt like, you know, when you hear people say, I really feel like this could never happen to me, I genuinely felt like something like this would never have happened to me. I just felt like a really normal, like Monday, like life, nothing extravagant, you know what I mean?
And you had, you know, as you say, you had that, you know, feeling of being content in your life. Your husband, your 2 gorgeous daughters, your job, and then what happened? There was something you started to not feel well in your body.
So I kind of noticed after having Drew, you know, things like irregular bleeding or pelvic pain and things like that. And it kind of progressed into, like, it started in around 2021 and progressed into kind of 2022. And I was kind of going to the doctor and I was saying, you know, is this normal? And, you know, I'd had like little tests done here and there, and I kind of thought, am I going into early menopause? That's kind of what I had in my head, you know. And I was asking my mum and my aunts and stuff, and like, any of you ever experienced this at this age? And I was kind of putting it down to, like, you know, I just had 2 babies quite close together. I was getting a little bit older, you know. I was entering a new stage of, like, I suppose, womanhood as such.
Yes.
And I was just thinking maybe these are normal changes, you know.
And you'd no cause for concern. You'd never been sick before that. You had gone for your smears.
Yeah. So I had a smear in 2009, 2013, 2016, and a smear in 2020. So, I mean, up until that, I didn't have any, you know, cause for concern at all. And then I think kind of the second half of 2022 was when things really started peaking, like the pain started getting more, and I started noticing a few different symptoms as well. And I was going to my doctor, and then they sent me for an ultrasound in January 2023. I went for that ultrasound, and again, everything came back fine, like, so I wasn't worried. And then I went for my routine smear in 2023, and then that's when I got called back to the doctor's office. And, you know, because I had been going up and down to the doctor at the time, I remember the GP at the time just saying to me, look, I am really worried about this, you know. And I was too. I was like, yeah, so am I. And that day they gave me like a little leaflet telling me about colposcopy, like I'd have to go for one of these. And I remember going to the very back of it, and it had like all the symptoms of cervical cancer. And that's when it clicked for me. I was like, I have every single one of these symptoms, like. And yeah, that's when everything kind of escalated, I suppose, from there. Went for a colposcopy about, I'd say only about 2 weeks later. And I remember saying to them in the room, like, you're not going to give me good news. This isn't, going to be good today. And they were kind of saying, oh, when was your last smear? And I said 2020. And I remember they checked the computer and they were like, yeah, it's 2020 was your last smear. And I just said, yeah, like, and I remember they done the colposcopy and it was like somebody just sucked the air out of the room, like,
Okay, yeah. So what was that? There was, you knew
Yeah,
something was wrong. You
I
just felt it.
felt they had, like, I know they're empathetic in their,
Mm.
manner in work anyway with doing a job like that. But I just felt like they just pitied me and they were really soft with me and they kind of said, I knew those test results would take about, people had said to me, about 4 to 6 weeks. And they turned to me that day and they were like, your results will be back in about 3 to 4 weeks. And I
Right.
just said to them, look, I'm actually going on holidays. I said, can you just make sure nobody contacts me when I'm on holidays? Because I know it's not going to be good news. So they actually took down the date I was due to come home. And then I went on that holiday and it was like I was flying home really late that evening. It was like 8 o'clock at night, I think the flight was. And I got a phone call that morning and I knew it was like a strange number, and I was like, oh, it just hit me, and they just said, are you home? And I said, no. I said, I'll be home tonight. And they said, you need to come into us first thing in the morning and you need to bring your husband. Which I saw, like, I mean, I knew I wasn't going into good news, with something like that.
How did that feel?
Horrific. I cried the whole way home on the plane. By the time I had got up the next morning and was ready to go in there, I was already on to the next thing. So I had accepted I had cancer. I knew that's what they were going to tell me. And I just kind of thought, well, what am I going to go in and ask them, So I went in that day and they sat me down and they had a nurse from the Mater and they just said, we were going to be moved from the Rotunda out to the Mater and it is cancer. We don't know what stage yet. We need to do some scans and find out what stage. So I just said there and then, like, will I need my womb removed? And they just said, more than likely, that is probably what we're looking at, So I just thought, okay. And so I kind of wanted to wrap my head around the next stage then before I went in for another appointment, So I just went home and, yeah, I told my family and friends and they were all really shocked, and I was just like, I kind of felt like, God, how did I not think that's what it was, up until that point? But again, my history
Yeah.
did not point in that direction of cancer. I knew cervical cancer was a slow progressing cancer and there's a lot to do to prevent it. And I had been doing everything.
You've been going for your smears.
Yeah.
Going
So
to your doctor. Yeah.
I kind of was like, this is crazy, But I went then, I'd say about a week. It all happened really quickly. About a week or two later, I went for an appointment. I got all the scans and stuff done, CT scans and MRIs and things like that. And then I went in and they said, so we're going to do a radical hysterectomy. So I didn't care. At that point, I would have chopped my 2 arms off. I had 2 babies at home and I just, all
What
I
age
cared
were your
about.
babies at this stage?
So Drew had just turned 4 on that holiday.
Yeah.
And Quinn was 6, 5.
So yeah.
4, 5, 6. Sorry, yeah. So she was edging on to 7, kind of.
Young
There's about
daughters.
2.5 years between them. So yeah, within, I'd say, the space of about 3 weeks, I was in having the radical hysterectomy, and I was kind of. They kind of had said to me, "You're stage 1B2 from the scans. We can see it. It's only a small tumor. It's really tiny. It's under 2 centimeters." And they kind of reassured me, "You're going to live your life." I remember one of them actually saying those words.
You're
to
going
me,
to live your life.
You're going to be okay. You're going to live your life. And I just thought, well, okay, let's just do whatever I have to do to get to that then. And then I had the radical hysterectomy. And when I woke up in the hospital, they were kind of all, the consultant and everyone was there. And they kind of said, look, when we went in, we had to check, lymph nodes, and we took 2 lymph nodes on either side as well. And I just said, okay. I kind of didn't even know what a lymph node was at the time. I was like, yeah, whatever. Was in hospital for about 4 days, came home, was recovering. And it was when I was recovering that I was kind of saying to Alan, like, how did this happen, And I started
It didn't make sense.
Didn't make sense at all. And I think it was them 2 weeks. I couldn't really do anything. I was laying in bed. It was kind of like having a C-section, a little bit more severe. But
And you'd had C-sections.
I had
with your
had
babies.
2 C-sections.
Okay.
So I was kind of like, knew what to do, knew how to look after myself, take it easy, don't be pulling things and dragging things. And I just kind of sat in bed and I was reading at the time. I just started reading about Vicky's story again. And
so this is Vicky Phelan.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And that's when I, read about Keano Carroll's and the solicitors and things like that. And I didn't know what direction to go in. So I just thought, maybe I'll just ring these and have a chat and see what they think. And that's what I done. And I rang them and I spoke to Siobhan Ryan on the phone for about an hour, I'd say, and told her everything. And she kind of just said to me, maybe this is a horrible twist of fate, but do you want to go further? Do you want to look into it? And I said, yeah, I didn't know how to do any of that. So she said, we can do all that, and you just relax and you just get better. And that's what I done. And they kind of just took over that side of it. And then I went back into the hospital then. And that's kind of when they told me, you're stage 3 and it has spread to the lymph nodes and we need to do some radiotherapy and chemotherapy. So I had to do 6 weeks of radiotherapy with chemotherapy with it. So I done the chemotherapy on the Wednesday and the radiotherapy Monday to Friday. And I done 6 weeks of that. And then they scanned me before Christmas and they were happy. They were like, yeah, we're happy with everything. And I just knew I didn't feel okay. I kind of felt like I was in a lot of pain. I felt I struggled to walk and like reach up and things like that. But again, at this point, my body had been through a lot. So I just kind of thought, well, it makes sense to be in pain. I was telling the hospital and they were like, well, you're now in menopause, because they actually left my ovaries. But then as soon as I got the radiotherapy and the chemotherapy, like that kind of destroyed the ovaries. And I was now in full menopause, as well as still healing from the radical hysterectomy, as well as still now recovering from radiotherapy and chemotherapy. So there was a lot going on in my body, So it kind of made sense to not be okay. And then I started 2024 in pain, and it just progressed all through 2024. It just got worse and worse and worse, to the point where I was like struggling to walk around my house.
And what was that like with 2 young kids that needed you?
Yeah.
And did you speak to them about
I
illness?
had to tell them. I mean, they got to a point where they just said, is your belly sore today, Ma?
Your belly sore?
Because I'd be afraid they jump on it or hit off it or hug me too tight, So I was like, watch my belly.
Yeah.
And I just used to say to them, yeah, it's just the medicine I'm taking to get better. It's just, making me a little bit sick for a while. And it's just, and it just became our norm, to be, watch my belly, watch Mam's belly, like, be careful, Mam needs to sit down, And
did they know that you had cancer?
Yeah, I did use the word cancer because I didn't want them to think that, if you get a sore belly, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I did say Mum has cancer and we're going to just try and get rid of it, and that's what we're doing, And they were so young, they didn't really ask too much about it. They just were so preoccupied with their own little lives and their own, dramas in school and their little friendships and stuff going on. So that's the way I wanted it. I kind of left, in a one way, their innocence was kind of a good thing, that I didn't have to explain too much. They were happy with a little answer, went over their head and they got on with their day, And then in 2024, I ended up, I was up and down to my doctor. I was in for appointments constantly, like every 3 months with the nurse, the clinical nurse, and I was telling them all my symptoms and they were kind of reassuring me, it's
just your body having
gone
through all it has.
One of the things. And
okay.
I kind of was thinking, like, God, if this is the pain I'm going to have to live in, how am I going to deal with it, because
for the rest of my life?
Yeah, at this point I was taking Solpadol tablets and I was timing them. So I was like looking at the clock saying, is it 4 hours? Can I take another one? Like, that's kind of the way I was living my life. And then I went for pain injections at the end of my back. They didn't work. I was sent for them through my GP, and then I ended up going to this private clinic in Cork for more pain injections to the front of me, because all the pain was kind of in my lower abdomen. And again, they didn't work at all. And then that was all through 2024. And then in January 2025, I just rang the hospital and I said, you need to see me earlier than my routine appointment. I'm in too much pain. And at this point, I could feel like a little lump under my belly button. And I just said, there's something not right, you know, I need to come in.
And again, you knew your body.
Yeah, I knew. So I went into that appointment so it's now 2025. And then the nurse kind of just said, like, you know, what's wrong? And I just said, she said, do you think the cancer is back? And I said, yeah. And she said, look, your scans have been good. Like, you know, you're doing okay. We're not worried about you. Like, and I just said, can I see a consultant, please? I said, please, I just need someone to just feel this. So she said, okay. So she got a consultant for me and they popped me up in the bed and the consultant felt my stomach and immediately was like, we need an urgent scan for Leona. So I was like, oh my God. So I think they were trying to calm me down the day. They were like, we're saying urgent because we know you're worried. But I knew. So I just said, okay. So again, it all kicked off with my scans and then they came back to me and I remember the nurse rang me and she said, can you come in on Tuesday? And I just said, just tell me. I said, is there something there? I said, I'm actually going off my game. Is there something there? And she just said, look, I can't say too much off the phone, but she said, unfortunately, there's a mass there, you know. So I was like, okay. So geared myself up for going back into that. And I went into that appointment. That appointment is the one that just...
So what, this was
floored us.
in 2025,
Yeah.
the January? No?
It was kind of, by this stage, it was probably maybe the end of February, start of March.
Okay. And what happened in that appointment?
They just said, like, I just went in and the consultant was sitting there and I said, what can be done? Like, can we have surgery? And they just said no. And I said, well, what are we looking at? And they were like, it's stage 4, like, and there isn't a whole lot we can do here. And I just was like, I just said, how much time do I have? And they said possibly years, but short years. And that just rings in my head like
Short years.
constantly, you know, those words every night. I just can never get them out of my head. And I just fell apart. Alan was with me and he had just his head in his hands, you know, and he was kind of slumped over and I just had my arm around him. And I just said, can we do treatment? Is there anything else out there? At this point, I had been contacting, you know, no, it wasn't at this point. This was when I started panicking. So I said, is there anything else out there? So they said, look, we're going to have to, you know, go back and talk about this and see what kind of line we can go down. I said, can I do chemotherapy? And they said, we don't know yet. We're not sure. We just needed to get bloods today. So I just got bloods and I just left. I said, I just want to go. So we just sat in the car, the two of us, and we just cried. Like, it was just silence in the car. Like, we just cried and just held on to each other, you know. And I just said, like, we have to go home now, tell the kids or say something to the kids. I was hysterical. My parents were up at the time. I knew all Alan's family were in our house. So we kind of took our time, took a minute for ourselves, and then we went home. But sure, look, when I walked into the house, I didn't even have to say anything. You know, my makeup was gone off my face. I was hysterical. They were after giving me painkillers that day, and they were very strong painkillers. And I remember I took 2 of them and I just slumped on the couch and everyone was coming in hugging me. And it honestly felt like we were kind of mourning my death there and then. And they were like, you know, Alan's nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters and coming in and everyone was just crying and hugging me and none of us knew what to do and nobody knew what to say. And the kids were kind of saying, like, what's going on? And we couldn't hide it. We were all heartbroken, you know.
And when it came to your daughters, what was that like for you as a mother?
Honestly, at that day, I can't remember kind of talking to them or anything. I remember not being able to look at them because I just looked at them and I just saw everything I was going to miss. Like, I just saw, you know, them getting older, 2 little girls. You know, I'm a hairdresser. I always thought, like, I'll be able to, you know, colour their hair for them. And, you know, and that's all I saw. I just saw everything I was going to miss, like little, you know, discos they were going to go to, you know, relationships, heartbreak, things like that I wanted to be there for, that I had always taken for granted, that now just seemed impossible, you know. And I remember my mum and dad just took the kids to Cork and me and Alan just cried. I stayed in the house for 5 days and I just cried and cried and cried and cried. And that's when I just woke up one of the days and I just thought, I can't do this. Like, I was going to sleep and I was like trying to knock myself out because when I woke up, it was just, I was waking up into this nightmare. Like, and every time I opened my eyes, I was like, I'm dying. Like, I'm actually dying here. And that's when I panicked. So that I made a video and I put it on like Instagram, and I just started like asking people for help, and I put my story out there. So I hadn't had my story out there before that. And I just thought, well,
You'll do anything.
someone, there has to be something out there. I would go anywhere. I would do anything. I need to stay on this earth, like. And yeah, I just ended up contacting like, hospitals everywhere. Like I was on to like New York, Boston, Thailand, Greece, England, Germany, like so many different countries. I just sent emails. I was like sending medical records. I was back and forth to the hospital. At this stage, then they kind of got back to me and said, we're going to do a quadruple therapy. So it was like chemotherapy and immunotherapy together. And I just thought, okay, yeah, let's go for it. They were like, you're going to lose your hair and things. I just was like, yeah, I didn't care. I was like, I was in such a desperate state to just stay here that I was like, I will do anything. So that's when I remember kind of talking to the kids then, kind of saying, look, Mammy has, the sore in my belly is back, and I'm now going to have to do a medicine, and it's going to make my hair fall out and stuff like that. But will you help me, cut it off and things? And I said, it's not going to fall out straight away. And like they were crying and hugging me, and they were like, you're still going to be beautiful, Mom. And, little things like that. We still love you. And I was like, oh. So, to be honest with you, I was more conscious about like how they would feel in school and stuff. I was like, would they be embarrassed, to be seen with me, or would their friends like them? Or, you know what I mean? I didn't want to be the cancer mom, but I was now having to face that full on. Like, I was able to kind of hide that part of me for up until that point. And then, yeah, we started quadruple therapy, and they ended up shaving my head with Alan. And we tried to just make fun of it. And, we did cry and laugh at the same time. And
like, at that point, did you say to the kids, have you ever mentioned, what may or may not happen with cancer?
I didn't kind of say like, I might die. I just always said, I'm really trying to get better. I didn't want to kind of go into too much detail, and I didn't want to worry them either to the point where it was going to affect their little daily lives,
Absolutely.
And I just thought, if it comes to that, we will deal with that. We've dealt with so much up to now, like. And then I think I'd done about 6 sessions of the chemotherapy with the immunotherapy, and they scanned me again, and they said, the tumour has dissolved. We couldn't believe it. We were kind of like, what? And they were like, you're doing really well, like, and we're going to keep you on the immunotherapy. So I was like, okay. So finished the chemotherapy, stayed on the immunotherapy, and like I had read about immunotherapy and stuff, and I knew how like it is amazing, and when it works for you, it's so good. You can live such a brilliant life with it. My hair started growing back.
Amazing.
We were like, oh my God, well, let's book a holiday. We didn't think we were going to be able to go on holidays.
So this is last summer?
This is last summer. So the July I got the news, and we were just ecstatic, like, and I was getting hope again,
Yeah.
So we ended up booking a holiday for like the September, and we went away with my friend and her husband and her kids, and we had a brilliant holiday, really good holiday. And then one of the days on the holiday, I was laying at the pool, and I feel that area a lot, even still to this day. And I just kind of felt it, and I was like, oh, it doesn't feel great again. I think I feel this.
Did your heart just drop?
Yeah, I remember kind of thinking about it myself for about a day before I kind of said it out loud, And then I said it to Alan and my friend Sarah. I just said, we were at the pool, and I just said, I said, guys, I think I can feel this again. And, we kind of laughed, and Sarah was like, I've lumps and bumps everywhere. And we were kind of joking about it, but I felt like I just wanted to ease them into it, I was like, I just mention it. But in my head, I knew.
Again, you knew.
Yeah. So we came home from that holiday, and they scanned me in the October, and yeah, I was right. So the tumour,
You're right.
The tumour was back again. So they took me off the immunotherapy. I just said, can I stay on it? They said, it's not working. And I just said, I knew my options were running out at that point. So I just said, what can we do? Is at this point, again, I've been onto every hospital, like,
Yeah.
I'd been looking into trials in Spain and, different clinical trials. And I just said, are there any clinical trials? And they said, there is one. But they said, I think my consultant said, I'm nearly sure it just closed. But she said, leave it with me. So I kind of just forgot about it because I just thought it wasn't going to happen, and then we decided to go with radiotherapy. So they just said to me, look, we're going to do radiotherapy. And then I said, well, I'd done that before. I said, and it didn't work. And they said, yeah, we know. And honestly, we're just going to try and buy you as much time as we can. So I just said, okay. At this point, what I was feeling in September was a little lump, and now I could kind of see a lump, and it was only October. So I said, darling, I think this is aggressive. I said, if it's like this in a month, what's it going to be like in 6 months? And I just said, I don't think I have a whole lot of time. The pain was starting to come back again and stuff. And I just said, let's just do the radiotherapy and see what happens. That's all I could do at that point. So you have to get these little tattoos, for radiotherapy and stuff. So I got them, and we'd all the appointments set up, and so I was starting radiotherapy on the Monday. And then I got a phone call the Monday before, and it was the matter. And they just said, can you come into clinic tomorrow? And I just said, oh God, what's going to happen now? They're going to just say, we're not going to bother doing the radiotherapy, that's going to be a waste as well. So I went in to that appointment, and my consultant just said, we got you on the trial. And I was like, what? And she was like, look, you have to think about it, because if you do the trial, you can't do radiotherapy. And I knew I was to start that Monday. So I just said, how long will I be waiting to start this trial? She said about 3 weeks. So I just thought, God, another 3 weeks of watching this tumour grow, And I just said, where do I sign? So she said, look, before you sign it, you're just going to be a number in this trial. So she said, what's going to happen is your number is going to go into a computer, and it's going to process whether you get this trial drug or whether you get standard of care chemotherapy. And I just said, okay, now the hurdle to kind of get across. And I said, no, where do I sign? I said, I want to do this trial. My back was up against the wall, and I knew the radiotherapy wasn't going to get me long, so my choices weren't great anyway. So I just signed the paper that day. And I went home and I told everyone I'd gone on the trial. I looked into the trial. I looked into the trial drug. I knew how good it was. And I just prayed, spoke to everyone I know up there. I was like, guys, come on.
Saint Novenas, lighting candles.
I was like, everyone I spoke to, I was like, can you light a candle for me? You just get faith as well out of nowhere. And you're like, it's like you just want everyone to just, manifest this for you. And then I was to start the trial on the Friday. So they rang me on the Thursday. And I was so nervous, and I answered the phone, and the nurse just said, you got the trial drug? And I was like, oh my God. So I fell to the floor. Alan knew. Alan was like, you got it. It was like somebody just said, here's more time with your kids. That's what it felt like,
Here's another slice of life.
Yeah. So I just went, okay, brilliant, let's do this. Went in on the Friday, and I remember all the nurses in there were like, we're so happy for you. We're delighted you got this. They're all so amazing as well, And I started that trial drug, and I'd say within about 2 or 3 days, my pain started going down. I could feel the symptoms reducing. And by this point, the hospital were like, you know your own body. So we listen to you now, and we know what you're like, and we know, because I said to them, I'd be the best patient ever if I get on this trial. I'm going to do everything you need me to do. I just kept saying to them, please give me this chance. So they were like, we know. And I was just like, I was trying to work with them, so obviously it was a trial. I was trying to, take note of symptoms for them, and they had warned me about certain symptoms, and, I was trying this, and I'd like mouth sores, and I was like, so I tried this week, and that actually worked. And, and then I just said to him one of the days, I said, I feel like this tumour is going down. And the nurse was like, that's what we want, but look, we're going away to severe scan and see. And I knew as well, if they scanned me and I wasn't working, I was going to be whipped off this as well, because they don't waste, obviously, if it's not working on you. So they done the first scan, and I remember I was waiting to see the consultant for the results, but I had treatment. So I went into treatment, and my nurse was sitting there, and she had like a smile on her face, and I was like, did you see my scan results? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, what? She was like, your tumour has gone down, it's shrinking, and I was like, and we were just hugging each other. She was like, look, I couldn't wait to tell you. She was like, the consultant knows. I said to him, as soon as she comes in, I have to tell her. And they were like, yeah. So by the time I went to the consultant, she was like, I believe your nurse told you. And I was like, yeah, like, she was like, we're so delighted for you, Leona. You know, this is doing really well. So I started it in November 2025. I'm still on it
And you're
today.
doing well.
I've done maybe three scans so far now, 3 or 4 maybe. And all the scans have been positive. So they've shown that the main tumor, the biggest tumor, which was, I think, 4 centimeters, has reduced each time. There is like little nodules as well, like kind of on my lymph nodes and stuff, which have, I think they're like 1 centimeter. They have remained stable.
Yeah.
So no new spots. You know, biggest tumor is going down. Symptoms are like so manageable. I do get the mouth sores, which can kind of prevent me from eating and stuff. So I have to watch that. But I'm in a rhythm of it now. So I know, you know, when my good days are my good days, I need to eat. I need to, you know, when I'm able to
keep
be
up your
active.
weight for your treatment.
Yeah, so I need to keep the weight up to a certain, you know, a certain level for the treatment. If I go below that, you know, they need to stop. So I did go below it at one point. I got really, really sick with the mouth sores. And we stopped the treatment for like a week, and I just rested and I looked after myself and I ate well and got myself back on my feet, and we carried on, and I've been carrying on doing it since then. So, I mean, considering I know I'm in every second week for treatment and stuff, and there is symptoms, but in general, I'm living a good life with cancer on this trail at the minute. Like, so we just go from scan to scan now.
And you
Like,
fought so hard to be here. And that's, on that note, while you're facing this most arduous health battle, you've got a legal battle that you were obviously working on too. And you received an apology from the HSE last year, June last year. Talk to me a little about that, how that felt on that day.
Going in that day, I just kind of said to my family were with me and stuff, you know, and I just said, you know, they're going to use really, you know, harsh terminology here now, you know, it's going to be terminal and I have a short life expectancy, and I just kind of prepared them for it. But when they were reading out the apology, I remember kind of looking to my family and they were all hysterical. Alan was next to me. He was hysterical and I wasn't. You know, I was kind of like sitting there, and I just felt like through it all, I just feel like my story just felt so kind of far-fetched, and I kind of doubted. Did people think, you know, did she really go for her smears? Because I think with cervical cancer, when people ask me what cancer I have, I kind of have to say, I say cervical cancer, but I always say, but I did get my smears. Because I feel like, you know, with breast cancer and things like that, and I'm not, you know, diminishing any type of cancer, but I just feel like, you know, there's a pity with it, but and it's celebrated a little bit more, as in, like, you know, there's so many groups and this and that. There's not so much with cervical cancer, and you kind of made feel like, you know, well, if you got your smears, you wouldn't be in that position, you know.
Yes, there's a national screening program, and this is, you know, you had your smears, you did everything right.
So I just felt like the apology validated my story.
Validated, because for so long, I presume, you know, you felt you weren't being believed.
Yeah, and I felt like, you know, I was saying this, but it was kind of like, oh, okay, like whatever. But I just felt that apology was like, made me feel like, yes, Leona, you were right in all this, and everything you said through this whole thing, like, you were right on
Were you
all of it.
angry?
I was angry initially when I was told I was stage 4. That's where my anger was. Again, I mean, I get up every morning and this is something I have to face every morning, but I think you have a choice, and you can either choose to kind of be here in the moment now and be happy that you're here, or you can choose to wallow in that, you know, self-pity and why did this happen to me and why me. I just have to push that aside, because otherwise I'll just become someone I'm not, and I just don't want to go down that road, you know. And just like, while I'm here, you know, and then, you know, we all say you could be hit by us in the morning or whatever, but it's the truth of it, and I don't know how long more I have now. You know, this trail has given me an extra bit of hope. I kind of just kind of go, you know, a month at a time and stuff like that. But in my head, I'm
too
like,
far ahead.
yeah, like I wouldn't ever plan more than, you know, a few months anyway, you know, because one, I don't know how I'm going to be health-wise. I don't know how strong I'm going to be. And two, I'm afraid in case, you know, I look too far ahead. And I know people say, you know, stay positive, and I am very positive and I am very hopeful, but I'm kind of realistic too, you know. So you're battling between the two of them. So I just don't want to be a bitter person. I don't want to be kind of, oh, poor me. Let's just try and get a little bit of positivity out of the story. And if, I can leave this world after change and all this is slight bit for the good, then why not use it for that instead of,
You now it's a cause that you never should have been a poster girl for. This shouldn't you shouldn't have to advocate for this
Yeah.
for something that was, not within your control.
Yeah.
You mentioned Vicky Phelan before, and you were very familiar with her story.
Yes.
You never thought that you would have to be, walking in similarly to her. What is a message that you would like to share today with people listening, with women listening who maybe are,
I suppose
thinking of listening to their bodies, but they're not being heard.
I think what we really need to understand is this is still happening. I'm not on my own here. I'm not a lone wolf. This is still happening. Women, you have to remember, Vicky Phelan's case was in 2018, and one of my misdiagnosed smears was in 2020. So it was 2 years on from her case. When I heard her case, I felt so sorry for her, but it kind of felt like, God, she made us a bit safer by speaking out about this, But did she? Because what there has been a lot done, and I'm so grateful that she carved the path for me to be able to understand a lot of this. But I just feel like so much more can be done.
Just speak to me a little about that, because I know that you're a major campaigner about bringing cervical check home. So what does that involve?
So 90%, I think it's up to 90% of our smears are still being sent to these labs. So the lab that I dealt with overseas, yeah. We have facilities in the Coombe that can, deal with a huge number of Irish cervical screening tests, and it's doing a very small portion of it. Again, they say we don't have enough staff and we don't have enough training for it. So I mean,
that needs
it's
to be
8 years on now, so it was 2018 that the revelations came about. We all found out about it. It's 8 years on. We need to be doing more. I think they said in I think it was 2024, they done something like 75,000 smears. That's just under the full capacity of Croke Park, so on a match, right? So that's all been done in 1 year. Here's millions of women. I think there's over 2 million women above the age of 24 alone living in Ireland. So we need to be, we have the infrastructure to do, we have the equipment to do this. So I just think we need to be moving it along a lot quicker.
And what would it mean to bring cervical check home? How would we have more control?
I think we could review it a little bit better. I think, even audits, they never brought them back either. Could they not bring that back? I know they have a program now that you can get your smears, checked through the HSC. But I mean, it's too late at that point. So what do we do? Do we just wait for women now to just get cancer and we will look into your smears? Or do we proactively try and prevent that,
Because the last thing we need is another apology.
Nobody wants to be in court. Nobody wants to be getting an apology. Nobody wants to be in my shoes, because it's not a nice place. And just saying to somebody, oh, sorry, and here's this, and I hope your family will be okay, is not enough.
It's not enough.
And unfortunately, it's happening a lot of women, and I'm just someone who felt like I could speak out about it. I've spoken to a lot of women behind the scenes that don't feel confident enough to speak out, or mightn't be in a position, in their personal lives to speak out. But I'm not on my own. It's happening a lot of women. I've had women's husbands, email me and mail me and say, this happened to my wife and we saw her, she's passed now, and we didn't get to do this and we didn't get to look into that. And it's happening way more than we know, way more than I ever thought, until I spoke out about my story and they all started kind of contacting me, that I was like, oh my God, this is such a bigger scale than what I ever thought.
And these are mothers, sisters, daughters.
I mean, I'm not doing this for, this is doing things like this takes time away from my family and
energy wise, everything, of course.
So I'm not doing it, just for a laugh. I'm doing it because I need people to see that this is happening, normal, everyday women,
and actually, to this, you speaking out like this, Leona, could save another woman's life.
Yeah.
Just maybe having concerns about their
Yes.
health.
And can question it. Like, don't be afraid to question professionals either. Don't be afraid. Like, nobody kind of said to me, oh, maybe you have a misdiagnosed smear. I wish somebody had said that to me, because it would have probably clicked with me a bit. I would have went, maybe that is what it was. You know, if someone had said something like that to me, but it was never ever said to me. We trusted my history. We trusted the process of the smears. Maybe it's okay to doubt that as well, you know, and I just want people to feel like it is okay to question things about your health. Like,
Yeah, and if you're in pain and you know your own body,
I knew every single time.
every time you were
I
right.
didn't need a scan to tell me when that cancer was back each time. Like, you know, I knew it was back each time it came back, and I knew something wasn't right initially. So you do know your own body, like, and yeah, changes do happen as we get older, but like, you shouldn't have to live in pain. And, you know, thank God there is a lot more spoken about, you know, endometriosis. I always trip up on that word, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, polycystic ovary. We know a lot more about those type of things now, but we, again, like, we need more specialists in the country for these things, like, you know. So we are getting there, but we're still a long way from where we need to be.
What is life like for you now?
Very, very different to what I thought it would be at this point. I am very grateful, you know, and I hear myself some days and I'm like, God, I'm so lucky of that. And I'm like, I'm so not lucky. But you just have to look at the, you know, the good in life and the good days. And, you know, I'd say to Alan so often, and we might just go for dinner with the kids. And I'm like, great, now I was able to do that today, you know. And these are, I know we always say it's the little things, but these are really the things that matter in life, you know. Just your everyday, normal life, going for a coffee, you know, not worrying about, you know, the bigger picture. It's just like, it brings you back kind of, you know, to ground level, and you're kind of like, you do see like just the everyday flaws kind of in life in general is all are the ones that you're like, want to be given out about, you know. The ones like, put your shoes
The weather,
away,
the
or
traffic.
the washing, they're the things you want to be given out about. And they're the things I still like to give out about, because, you know, I've been given out about bigger things that, you know, when you get to that point, it puts a lot in perspective, like, and you just really have to enjoy life when it's going normal, you know, not even anything extravagant, just when your normal day is just going, is when we really have to live in the moment, you know.
And we talk about legacies, and I know you mentioned before Vicky Phelan's legacy. What is, you know, one thing that, if you could make a change, if you could do something through, as you say, the darkness of all this, what do you think that would be?
It would definitely be to get smears brought to Ireland more, like get our checks done here. I think if I could know that was in place for my kids, you know,
For your daughters?
yeah, like, even through all, you know, the cervical check scandal, you were far less likely to be in the 221 plus group if your smear was done in Ireland than you were if it was done abroad.
That's outstanding statistic.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's there. The answer is there. We just need to get to it, you know. And if I could do that for, I think, the women of Ireland, and just leave them a little bit safer, genuinely, that's why I'm doing this. Like,
The women of Ireland are very lucky to have you, Leona.
I don't know about that. Moaning and giving out here, there, and everywhere.
You're an inspiration.
Oh, thanks so much.
Thank you so much for being here.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me and giving me the space to talk about this.